12. Embarrassing things. Seniors do after 60 that no one talks about, but everyone notices. I started noticing something strange during my time with older adults. At senior centers, family dinners, even during quiet strolls in the park. No matter where I went, the same subtle patterns kept popping up. Little behaviors, small shifts, habits that quietly crept in after 60. Most seniors never talk about them, but almost everyone around them notices. They're not obvious, they're not malicious, but they can change how others see you and how connected you feel. This is Better Aging Advice for Elderly, where we share real stories, smart health tips, and emotional truths to help you age with strength, confidence, and deeper connection. If you believe aging should feel better, not lonelier, tap like and hit subscribe. Because once you hear these, you won't unsee them. 1. The too honest comment. Elaine was known for her no-nonsense attitude. At 68, she believed honesty was her greatest virtue. "I've earned the right to say what I think," she'd say with a shrug. So when her daughter-in-law showed up with a new haircut, Elaine didn't hesitate. "That makes your face look wider," she said flatly. She wasn't trying to be cruel, she thought she was being helpful. But the room went silent. Her daughter-in-law smiled awkwardly and excused herself. The damage was done. Here's the thing. After 60, many people feel freer to speak their mind. Life's too short to sugarcoat, right? But there's a fine line between honesty and bluntness. What's often meant as a helpful truth can easily come across as judgment or criticism. It's not about being fake, it's about being thoughtful. The filter may fade, but empathy should grow stronger. Words have weight, especially when they come from someone older and respected. The younger people in our lives are listening, watching, and yes, feeling. They may not tell you when it stings, but they remember how it made them feel. Here's a simple shift. Before giving your opinion, ask yourself, would I have wanted to hear this at their age? Would this make me feel supported or judged? You can still be honest, but kindness is what makes people listen. And more than anything, people remember how we made them feel. Choose to leave warmth, not bruises, with your words. 2. The grocery aisle rambler. Vernon never meant to hold up the line. But every Thursday at 10 a.m., the cashier at the local market braced herself, because she knew Vernon had a story coming. He'd start with the weather, move on to a memory from his Navy days, and somehow weave in a story about his dog from 1984. The people behind him? Shuffling, sighing, checking their watches. To Vernon, it felt like a normal chat. To everyone else, it felt like a delay. Here's the deeper truth. Vernon lived alone. His phone rarely rang. Grocery trips weren't just errands, they were his social hour, his lifeline. And he's not alone. After 60, social circles shrink. Friends move, spouses pass, routines quiet down. So when someone, anyone, offers a listening ear, even just for a moment, the words pour out. Not because we're chatty, because we're human. Loneliness doesn't always look like silence. Sometimes it talks too much. We all need connection. But it's also important to read the room. If a cashier looks rushed, or someone behind you seems impatient, it might not be the best time for a long story. Here's a gentle shift. Save your rich conversations for someone who has time to hear them fully. A weekly phone call, a community group, or even a neighbor can give space for connection that won't feel one-sided. Your stories matter. They just deserve the right setting and the right audience. Because when someone really listens, it's not about passing time. It's about feeling seen. 3. The Forgotten Grooming. Lucille always had a thing for red lipstick. It made her feel bold, alive, like herself. But somewhere between retirement and her 70th birthday, she stopped wearing it. Stopped brushing her hair as often. Stopped checking the mirror before leaving the house. She didn't feel sad, just indifferent. And no one said a word. But when she arrived at lunch one day, one of her friends leaned in gently and said, "You okay? You look tired." Lucille smiled, but deep down, she knew what had changed. She just didn't think anyone noticed or cared. Here's the truth most people won't say out loud. When we stop taking care of ourselves, people notice. Not because they're judging, but because something feels off. After 60, grooming can feel less urgent. You're not heading to the office or school pickup lines anymore. But grooming isn't about impressing others. It's about staying connected to your identity. Self-care isn't vanity, it's visibility. It's how we say, I still matter, I still care, I'm still me. Even the smallest rituals, a spritz of cologne, a swipe of lipstick, a comb through your hair, can bring back a sense of pride and presence. Lucille didn't need a makeover. She just needed to feel visible again. Here's a simple habit. Pick one small thing, lipstick, earrings, a clean shave, and make it your daily "I'm still here" signal. It's not for anyone else. It's for you, because the world sees us the way we show up, and you deserve to be seen. 4. The story repeater. Every Sunday, without fail, Hank would lean back in his chair, grin wide, and start in. The summer of '63, biggest bass I ever caught. His grandson, Nathan, would smile politely. The first time, it was charming. The second, nostalgic. By the 6th or 7th, Nathan started showing up late, or not at all. Hank wasn't trying to be boring. That fishing trip was one of his favorite memories, but he didn't realize he was telling it again. This happens more than most care to admit. After 60, it's not uncommon for memory to shift. Short-term details slip while long-term stories stay sharp, so we reach for the familiar, the ones we know by heart. But here's the catch. When we repeat old stories too often, it can quietly push people away, not because they don't love us, but because they crave something new too. Fresh stories build fresh connections. That doesn't mean we stop sharing our past. It means we mix it with the present. Talk about what made you laugh last week. Something you read, a neighbor's odd outfit, even a favorite dish you cooked. Here's a simple habit. Before you share a memory, pause and ask, "Have I told this before?" If the answer is yes, try adding something new, or ask the other person about their week instead. It's not about being perfect, it's about being present. Because when conversation feels like discovery, not déjà vu, people lean in. They remember, and they come back for more. 5. The back in my day lecture. Edna watched her granddaughter scroll through her phone, thumbs moving like lightning. With a sigh, she muttered, "Kids these days. Always glued to those things." Then came the usual. Back in my day, we played outside. We looked people in the eye. We didn't need all these gadgets. Her granddaughter smiled politely, then slowly tuned out. Edna meant well. She wanted to share her values, her wisdom, her memories of a simpler time. But what she didn't realize was that her words weren't connecting, they were dividing. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Every generation rolls their eyes at the one that came after. But the moment we start sounding like a broken record of how it used to be, we risk sounding more like critics than caregivers. It's easy to forget how much the world has changed, but it's even easier to forget that connection always matters more than correction. Wisdom doesn't have to come with a lecture. It can come through curiosity, through asking questions, through listening, even when you don't fully understand TikTok or why anyone wants oat milk. Here's a small shift. Instead of "back in my day," try "tell me more about yours." Let them explain. Ask how it works. You might not agree, but you'll stay connected. Edna didn't need to understand smartphones. She just needed to show she cared more about her granddaughter than her own nostalgia. Because the goal isn't to go back in time. It's to walk forward together. 6. The unaware wanderer. Sylvester loved the mall. Not for shopping, but for walking. At 75, his doctor said movement was medicine, and he took that seriously. So every Thursday, he laced up his sneakers and made his slow, steady rounds. But he had a habit, one he didn't notice. He'd pause in the middle of crowded aisles, drift sideways without looking, stand still in front of displays like time had frozen. Behind him, people sidestepping, huffing, trying not to say anything rude. Sylvester wasn't trying to be inconsiderate. He simply forgot the pace of the world around him. To him, he was just moving through his day. To others, it felt like a roadblock. Here's the thing. After 60, the body naturally slows down, but that doesn't mean awareness should. We all deserve to take up space, but being mindful of how we take it up makes all the difference. Because when people feel considered, they return the favor. Being thoughtful doesn't mean rushing, it means noticing. Noticing when someone's behind you. Noticing if you've stopped in the center of the path. Noticing how your presence affects the flow around you. Here's a helpful habit. When you're out and about, think like a driver. Check behind. Step aside to pause. Stay to one side on busy walkways. It's a simple shift from unaware to aware. Sylvester didn't stop walking. But once he started being more mindful, people smiled at him instead of sighing behind him. Because respect goes both ways, and even a slow step can carry grace. 7. The death jokes. Janice had always used humor to cope. When her friends made plans months in advance, she'd chuckle and say, Well, I'll probably be 6 feet under by then. At first, everyone laughed. Nervous chuckles, shrugs, quick changes of subject. But over time, the jokes kept coming. At brunch, if I make it to dessert, it'll be a miracle. On her birthday, well, another year closer to the grave. And slowly, the invites stopped coming. Not because her friends didn't care, but because the weight of those jokes added up. The laughter turned to discomfort. The room grew quieter. Here's what often goes unsaid. Talking about death isn't wrong. In fact, it can be healthy, honest, even healing. But when it becomes the default, the punchline to every conversation, it can create distance instead of closeness. People don't always know how to respond. They might worry you're depressed, or they might just feel helpless and start pulling away. Here's the shift. If you're feeling anxious about health, aging, or the unknown, talk about it honestly, not jokingly. Share it with someone who'll listen. There's strength in saying, "I'm scared," or "This has been on my mind lately." Because what you really want isn't to joke, it's to be understood. Janice didn't mean to make people uncomfortable. She just didn't know how else to express her fears. But when she replaced the jokes with real conversations, her friendships deepened. Humor can heal, but honesty connects. And sometimes, saying what you truly mean lands better than any punchline. 8. The Tech Refuser. Clyde wasn't angry about technology, just uninterested. "No need for all that," he'd say, waving his hand. No texting, no email, no video calls. When his daughter sent baby photos of his new grandson, Clyde never saw them. When the family FaceTimed from a vacation, he wasn't on the screen. When birthdays were planned in group chats, Clyde got left out. Not out of malice, but momentum. Over time, his silence felt like absence. He didn't mean to disconnect. But that's exactly what happened. Here's the quiet truth. Choosing to avoid technology might feel like personal preference, but to others, it can feel like distance. In today's world, tech isn't just convenience, it's connection. A text says, "I'm thinking of you." A video call says, "You matter enough to see." Even a simple emoji can feel like a hug. No one's asking you to become a tech wizard, but refusing it altogether can make loved ones feel like they're living in a different world, one you've chosen not to enter. Here's a gentle shift. Pick one tool. Just one. Learn how to text. Try a video call with a grandchild. Ask someone to show you how to join a family group chat. It's not about mastering everything. It's about meeting people where they are, so you can be part of their moments, not just their memories. Clyde eventually learned to send one-line texts. His first message, "Hi, buddy. Saw the photo? He's beautiful." His daughter cried. Because even a few words can mean everything. 9. The Overgiver. Bernice showed her love through giving. Birthdays, holidays, random Tuesdays, she always had a gift. New shoes for her granddaughter, a pricey watch for her son. She even mailed her daughter-in-law a $500 blender, just because. But one day, her son pulled her aside and gently said, "Mom, you don't have to keep doing this. It's too much." Bernice was crushed. Too much? She thought. They don't appreciate me. They think I'm a burden. But what she didn't realize was, her family wasn't rejecting her love. They were trying to protect her peace. Here's the deeper truth. When giving becomes a way to earn love or avoid feeling left out, it stops feeling generous and starts feeling heavy. Overgiving can come from guilt, from fear of being forgotten, from wanting to stay relevant in a world that's speeding past you. But real connection doesn't come from price tags. It comes from presence. Here's the shift. Instead of asking, "What can I give them?" try, "How can I be with them?" A handwritten note, a shared story, a memory only you can pass down. Bernice eventually swapped her gifts for something more lasting. She made a family recipe book, one for each child, handwritten, pages stained with love. Her son called and said, "Mom, this is the best gift I've ever gotten." Because sometimes the most valuable thing you can give is you. 10. The Serial Apologizer. Maurice had a kind heart, but his words often sounded like he was walking on eggshells. "Sorry for talking so much. Sorry I'm in the way. Sorry to be a bother." He said it to the nurse, to the waiter, to his grandkids, even when he hadn't done anything wrong. One day, his daughter gently replied, "Dad, you don't have to apologize for being here." That hit him harder than he expected, because somewhere along the way, Maurice had started believing his presence was a burden. Here's the deeper truth. Many older adults begin shrinking themselves without realizing it. They apologize not for mistakes, but for existing. It's a quiet kind of grief. The kind that comes from feeling overlooked, underestimated, or out of place. But here's what Maurice, and so many like him, needed to hear. You don't owe the world an apology for being part of it. Every room you walk into holds a little more wisdom because you're there. Every story you share carries a thread someone younger may desperately need. And every moment you choose to take up space is a quiet act of courage. Here's the shift. Next time you feel an apology creeping in, ask yourself, did I actually do something wrong? Or am I just feeling small? Replace sorry with thank you for waiting. I appreciate your patience. Or simply, say nothing at all. Maurice started catching himself. One day, at a crowded cafe, someone brushed past him. He almost said, sorry, but instead he smiled and stepped aside. It was small, but it felt like standing tall again, because your presence isn't a problem. It's a gift. 11. The chronic complainer. Della didn't mean to push people away. She just spoke her truth. Her knees hurt. Her neighbor was too loud. Her doctor was always late. It became her rhythm. Aches, sighs, worries, repeated like a daily weather report. At first, friends listened with love. But over time, the phone calls slowed. Invitations faded. One friend quietly admitted, I just don't have the energy for it anymore. That stung. But here's what Della, and many others, never realized. People care deeply, but they also need hope, not just heaviness. When every conversation feels like a storm cloud, even the kindest hearts seek shelter. It doesn't mean your pain doesn't matter. It means connection needs more than just struggle to survive. Here's the deeper truth. Venting is human. But when it becomes a habit, it can crowd out laughter, warmth, and light. Here's the shift. Start each interaction with something small and positive, before diving into what's hard. I've been hurting, yes, but I saw the funniest video of a cat chasing its tail today. Or, it's been a tough week, but I'm really proud I made it to my appointment. It's not about pretending things are perfect. It's about reminding others and yourself that joy still exists in the cracks. Della began keeping a light list. Every morning she wrote down one good thing. By the end of the week, she had 7 stories worth sharing. And when her neighbor dropped by one afternoon and said, "It's good to hear you laugh again," Della realized something powerful. Being real is brave, but so is being kind with your energy. Because people won't always remember your complaints, but they will remember how they felt after talking to you. 12. The silent Fader Lionel used to be everywhere. Sunday dinners, church picnics, birthday calls. But slowly, he stopped showing up. One missed gathering turned into 2. One unread message turned into dozens. He told himself, they're busy. I don't want to be a burden. They won't notice. But they did. His daughter called and left voicemails that went unanswered. His grandson stopped by and found the porch light off. And his old friend Martha? She sat at their favorite diner booth, alone, wondering where he'd gone. Here's the truth. When we quietly fade away, we think we're saving people from the trouble of keeping up. But in reality, we're robbing them of the chance to love us out loud. Disappearing doesn't make you forgotten. It just makes you missed in silence. Here's the deeper shift. You don't have to show up perfectly. You just have to show up. Send the message. Answer the call. Accept the invitation, even if you only stay a little while. Because when you pull away, people might assume you don't care. But often, it's just the weight of age, self-doubt, or unspoken sadness that holds you back. Lionel eventually picked up the phone. He called Martha and said, "I'm still here. Just didn't think anyone noticed." She replied, "I noticed every day." So if someone's been on your mind, if you've been meaning to reach out, let this be your sign. You still matter. You're still wanted. You're still part of someone's world. Even when you're quiet, your absence speaks louder than you think. These aren't flaws. They're reflections of time, of experience, of being deeply human. They show up not because we've failed, but because we're still growing. And here's the beautiful truth. Every one of these habits can be reshaped. A little awareness, a little intention, and suddenly, connection feels closer, not farther. So if one of these stories made you pause, if you saw a little of yourself or someone you love, that's not a reason for shame. It's a reason for hope. Because aging isn't about fading away. It's about finding new ways to stay present, to stay seen, and to stay loved. Let's keep that light on. Tell me, was there one moment that hit close to home? Drop it in the comments. I read everyone. And if this message stirred something in you, tap like so it reaches someone else who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more honest, heartfelt advice right here at Better Aging Advice. We're growing better together.